Good afternoon, gearheads. Welcome to Speed City's coverage of the Canadian Grand Prix. This is John Massengale, and I'm in the studio in Austin, Texas. Jonathan Green is not going to be with us today, but I do have Mr. Bob Varsha. Mr. Varsha, how are you today, this afternoon?
Doing just great. A civilized hour, I must say, to be covering our favorite motorsport. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. And a special thought for Jonathan Green, who's looking after a family issue this weekend. And we wish he and his family all the best. And we hope to see him back soon.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll be back soon. And happy Father's Day to you too, Bob, and all the fathers
Thank
out
you.
there. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to this race. This could get very interesting. We had a fantastic
Oh, yeah.
qualifying and another great qualifying. That's three in a row we've had, and some rain to spice things up. But it doesn't look so wet right now, does it, Bob?
No, but that's not going to remove the mystique and the questions about this race because of all that rain you mentioned and the fact that there are very few proper support races. They have Ferrari Challenge and Formula Ford 2000 in Canada, I think. So the track has not rubbered in much at all. In fact, washed clean by the rainfall. So it's going to be interesting to see the medium Pirelli tires grained a little bit in Friday practice on a dry track. But that's what everybody is going to be relying on for the ultimate lap time in this race. That and the hard compound. Everybody has lots of the very soft compound left, but I don't think anybody plans to use them in the race unless they have a shot at the bonus championship point for pole. So there's a lot of questions to be answered. What do we start on? Watch those tires very, very carefully. Watch what everybody else is doing with tires. No more rain is expected, but it's cloudy. It's cool. It's only about 65 Fahrenheit. It's a fabulous track, a fabulous city, and I'm sure the grandstands will be packed. The Canadians love their Formula One, and I think they're looking for a good race to top off this weekend.
Man, I'm glad you said that, Bob, because this really is one of the favorites, isn't it? I know that you've been there many
Mhm.
times, and by the
Yep.
way, we are going to have Chris Medland joining us from Montreal here shortly, and he's going to bring his microphone and walk around the pit lane and paddock and today and see what he can who he can run into for us. But yeah, Bob, you've been there a bunch, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. And it's changed a lot, I must say. You know, in recent years, all of the Formula One circuits around the world have been put on notice. They need to up their game. Some have done so in spectacular fashion. I'm thinking of places like Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, Silverstone in England, and in Montreal. The Circuit Gilles Villeneuve has also made lots and lots of improvements. I'll fire one word of warning. A friend of mine is up there and said he has never seen so much security around the track as they have this weekend. And I wondered why that was. He says they are very much concerned about protesters, fossil fuel protesters, which raises a whole nother kettle of fish. I mean, I was in Berlin with Formula E when some protesters climbed the track
Yeah.
fence and got on the track, tried to super glue themselves to the track. They were protesting fossil fuel use around the world. And I thought, Formula E, fossil fuels. It's an electric series. There isn't a gallon of gas anywhere within miles of the place. What is going on? But apparently, that's the cross being born this weekend, and they're genuinely concerned about track incursions. So hopefully, nothing like that happens, and we just have a great race because Canada deserves it. It's been around a long time. I never think of Canada as being one of the older circuits in Formula One, but there's only three or four circuits that have hosted Formula One more. Monza, certainly, Silverstone, Monaco, and maybe one more. But yeah,
Yeah.
54 times now, I guess, Formula One Racing Canada has been held on this circuit.
Well, and it's funny you talk about the protesters at Formula E, which is ironic, but also if you think
Mhm.
about Formula One, the contributions Formula One has made to efficiency in internal combustion and the current
Mhm.
commitment to go carbon zero by
Yep.
2030, the next generation of engines
Yep.
are going to be roughly 50-50 internal combustion versus electric. And now the fuels they're going to be using are going to be carbon
Yeah.
zero.
They'll be
So,
using
yeah.
sustainable fuels. Yeah, I mean, we're working on it, folks. Be patient. I know you've waited a long time, and I know it's dear to the hearts of lots of folks who are worried about climate change. We're right there with you. Um, but, it does take time. And at the same time, preserve the entertainment value and the heritage of what these sports are. So, hang in there. Things will get better.
Yeah, good point, preserving the hair. But But Bob, think about it. The Formula One is going to be on the, as always has been. I mean, been hybrid since what, 2010, maybe around there. So,
2013 was
well,
the,
but
well,
they had
2014 was the first hybrid year.
but they had KERS before that. So there was
They
KERS.
did, yeah.
That the KERS goes all the way back to I think 2010. So they've been
Yeah.
leading the way as usual, and so yeah. Anyway, I want to talk about some racing because qualifying
Yeah,
was
let's do that.
fantastic, and my favorite story of qualifying, my favorite story of the year has been Alonso, but my favorite story of qualifying was Nico Hulkenberg on the front row, at least for a few hours. That was exciting.
Yeah, for a little while. It wasn't until almost 9 o'clock last night that they issued the final grid for this race. 4 different drivers got nicked for,
Nico
well,
Clip
3 of them for
Hulkenberg.
impeding other drivers in that wet qualifying session. And I really do feel for them because there was water flying everywhere. It was really hard to avoid people behind you, except in the case of Carlos Sainz, who just absolutely stepped in it during his drive. But Nico Hulkenberg started up in the front row with a beautifully timed drive for the Haas team. And then they ruled that he was over the speed limit. He did not meet the minimum time. Once the red flag came out for Oscar Piastri's crash in Q3, they have to stay on a minimum lap time, which a lot of people confuse with a minimum speed. But he was just going a little bit over it. He said, look, the red flag came out. I was already in the turn 1 complex on another hot lap. So I was already way over the lap time. I had to slow down, couldn't quite manage it. I didn't understand what my systems were telling me, the little beeper in my ear that tells me whether I'm on the speed limit or not. Anyway, they refused to, well, they did knock it down a little bit. Normally, violating the red flag speed limit is a 10 grid place penalty. Instead, they gave Nico only 3 because they said he was trying and he was distracted by another car out there and yada, yada, yada. So anyway, off the front row, but Haas can say, hey, we did it. We got out there and did it on merit. And then we found ourselves nicked by a technical rule.
Well, and when I heard that it was only 3 places, I was like, okay, honestly, that is effectively not a penalty at all because we know
Yeah.
that they were not going to be able to hold that position. But what the hope is that they are able to hold some points positions. In fact, in honor of them doing so well, we're going to hear from Nico Hulkenberg first today. Let's hear from Nico right now.
Yeah, we made it work. We're on the right tires at the right moment. Timing was good today. Also in Q3, the red flag, kind of was lucky for us because I just finished my second lap, which put me in P2. Because before I think I was pretty much not anywhere. But yeah, I mean, clean quali. It's challenging. It's tough here. With inters, it's sketchy. A lot of the exits are pretty quick already, considering it's wet, and then you got all these concrete walls around. So it's not been easy, but I enjoyed it. It was good fun, and obviously very happy to stand here.
I know you've got a lot of fast cars around you for tomorrow afternoon, but you're optimistic you can at least hold it into the top 10?
Yeah, that's the big question, and that's obviously the task for tomorrow. It's going to be super, super difficult if it's dry. I've not really run much yesterday in the dry, so that makes it extra difficult. But we'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see how the car behaves. I've got a little bit of experience under my belt, which hopefully will help me tomorrow, to deliver a good result and to do that race.
Great stuff. All the best. Thanks.
Man, he's been really fantastic this year, hasn't he, Bob? I mean, he's been fast and a great teammate and just kind of fun too, just listening to him and watching him.
Yeah, he is. I mean, Nico, okay, he's not a world beater, but I have a theory that there's a huge spectrum of talent, and you rise as far as you can given the equipment you have and lots of other factors. And Hulkenberg has always been right there or thereabouts. He has a pole in his history. He's got closing in on 200 races. He hasn't won a race, but he's always there. And he's the super sub. Everybody wanted Hulkenberg as first choice in their car if one of their regular drivers could not go. And there's a reason for that, because he is good. And in reading all of the post-qualifying comments about who's got what tires, who they're watching out for, which cars to keep an eye on, people are taking Nico Hulkenberg and the Haas team very seriously. They're looking at Max Verstappen, they're looking at Fernando Alonso, they're looking at the 2 Mercedes, and they're looking at the Hulk in that MoneyGram Haas.
It's funny. I completely agree with all of that, and the teams have been, taking them a little more seriously, and that kind of begs the question: is Haas on the verge of making themselves, moving up that midfield? They finished as a team. They finished as a high in fifth. I think that was like 2017 or 2018. And, I feel like now that they've committed to these extra 5 years, they're doing all these things right. They've been great for the sport because honestly, because Gunther Steiner's been great for Drive to Survive. I mean, honestly, you could almost say that Gunther's efforts have been one of the brightest spots. In fact, you could say that easily, maybe the brightest spot in the Drive to Survive series. And so they've been a really great addition to the sport. But do you think they can
Yep.
take that leap to maybe start battling for best of the rest on a consistent basis?
Well, maybe. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Nico Hulkenberg put in a great drive, but they timed it perfectly. And I see that
Yeah.
as a positive. He and his engineer and their strategist looked at the weather, looked at the tires available, said, okay, let's go with the soft slicks right now. Out he went. And much like um, Alex Albon in the Williams, who led Q2, I'll talk about that more when I run down the grid, but that's the first session of any kind led by a Williams car in half a decade.
Hmm.
And it's because of the timing and the circumstances. Yeah, on a beautiful sultry day, Max Verstappen is not going to be threatened by Alex Albon, but he put in the time. He showed that the team has the depth of experience and engineering, and on any given day with a little bit of a leg up, like rain, they can do good things. You heard in Nico Hulkenberg's voice in that clip. He doesn't expect to win this race, but he does expect to go out there and vie for points. And I think that's terrific.
Well, I'm excited to talk about it because it's just, we've seen Haas do good things in the past, and let's continue to hope. But we now have Mr. Chris Medland, who has just joined us from Montreal. Chris, how are you, sir?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm a bit warmer and drier than yesterday.
Yeah, that was my next question.
It was tough at times. Yeah, it was tough at times. But I say that, like, there's still wet patches even in the paddock. It's just been that kind of cold, damp last 48 hours. So it's still not all dried up in that sense. Teams have been having to like mop up floods and things. But yeah, the track itself is in good condition. And the sun is trying to come out. It's been cold all morning, but it's trying to warm up, which it's kind of going to be interesting because I think we're going to see like the track conditions change a bit during the race and track temperatures rise, and maybe the way a car looks at the start of the race and whether the conditions suit it might then move away from it if they struggle with tires later on. So yeah, that's just an added variable because it's one of those odd things you normally think as you get later in the day it gets cooler, but today it just looks like it's going to get warmer based on the forecast.
Well, Chris, you're singing our tune by saying changing track conditions, because isn't that what we always want in Formula One? And well, how do you think that might affect tire strategies?
To be honest, I think we're going to be getting people that start leaning towards a two-stop, having thought it'd be a one-stop. Pirelli were in between the two when I spoke to them last night. The quickest being a two-stop where you start on the medium and then do two stints on the hard. But there's also the potential to just do a one-stop medium hard, or even try starting on the hard and run long enough to switch to the medium towards the end of the race. When it's colder, there was going to be potentially issues with graining on the medium tyre, which was a slight concern, and we might still see that at the start for anyone who starts on the medium. But I don't think we'll see anyone at the front start on the hard tyre, just because you give up too much performance if you do that. But yeah, as it warms up, then obviously you might find that you just put a little bit more stress, certainly through the rear tyres. They might start to overheat a bit when you're trying to get traction, especially in a race situation and you're trying to stay close to cars, things like that. So that might be where people are trying to extend early on to get to a one-stopper. They might struggle towards the end of the race and switch to a two. So yeah, I think it just adds a good variable. Had a good chat with Tom McCulloch from Aston Martin earlier today, who said, yeah, there's a lot of unknowns on that front. And he says this is going to be a very reactive race. Everyone's kind of responding to how the track changes, how the cars are performing, how the tires are performing, because they don't know with the lack of practice we've had.
Bob Varsha, what do you think? Do you think that this might favor? We know Red Bull's just stunningly fast in virtually every condition. Do you think this might favor any particular team?
Well, I mean, a moment ago, we put up the Pirelli predictions on pit strategies, including the two-stop strategy. There it is. Yellow is the medium tire. It seems kind of counterintuitive to start on the yellow tire that had graining problems on Friday. But as Chris just pointed out, it is the better performing tire in terms of lap time in the beginning of the race. That's going to be critical before you go to the hard tire. I would also note that the only team that I can think of, only teams, I should say, there's two of them, Ferrari and Mercedes are the only teams that put their drivers out on that hard tire on Friday to get a sense of what the tire would do in the prevailing conditions at the time. So they may have a little more data on that front than everybody else, which could give them a leg up in the race. Just one of the questions we're going to see answered in the next couple of hours.
All right. Well, coming up after this, we are going to hear from Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso to see what they think after qualifying yesterday. You're listening to Speed City F1. Back after these messages. All right, I think we're still live on the YouTube stream and Facebook. Let's see who's there. TW's there. Hey, TW, he's always there. It's midnight for him over in Thailand. Wow. Kevin Kelly, there he is. He's there watching from Kingwood, Texas with his nephews. Hey, Kevin and nephews. And Paul Bryan joins and says, I joined you since you were the only show where I could avoid Danica. Now, Paul. Expect nothing less from Paul Bryan.
Tell us how you really feel, Paul.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on, Chris? I hear voices, and not in my head.
No, it's all right. That's just me walking around the paddock. Well, I've been told Verstappen's gone back into the garage. I'm currently in the paddock where they close the pit lane for the next 4 minutes. So I was just doing a lap to see if there's anyone I can speak to. Greg Maffei is here. So is Roger Goodell, the NFL commissioner.
Interesting.
He's been visiting,
Really?
meeting all the team bosses today. So yeah, they've been showing each other around really. And yeah, Greg Maffei is just having a chat with some dignitaries, I think. So I was just keeping an eye on those. And Otmar Zafnauer is still this side of the fence rather than on the grid yet. So you kind of have to choose. Do you want to be on the grid before 10 past, like with 50 minutes to go before the race? Or do you want to wait an extra 15 minutes and go afterwards? Because you can't move in the middle when the cars are going through. But yeah, it sounds like maybe a little issue at Red Bull for Verstappen's car.
Oh, we're losing you, Chris. We lost you there for a minute, but I hear you're back. But
okay, yep, should be.
That's interesting.
Don't move.
Yeah, stay where you are. That's funny. It's interesting you said about Roger Goodell, the chairman of the NFL, is that clearly Formula One's doing well because Roger Goodell wouldn't be there. He wouldn't even be on his radar normally.
No, I think you're right. There must be crossovers or something that they're chatting about.
Considering, yeah. Here we go.
Hello to everyone. This is Gunther Steiner. This is Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
Hey, Chris, you're going to love this next. Before we hear from Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso, I have to tell you, I was listening to Gunther's book. I was actually listening to it on the way to go see my father-in-law this morning. And lo and behold, in chapter 7, Gunther starts talking about us. He starts talking about the interview you did with him where he...
I mean, I would have fucked the whole paddock.
Exactly. Hey. Thank you, Casey, the producer. He was talking about that in his book. And, I'm listening to the book rather than read it. And I was very excited to hear that. That was cool.
I think we need to play that clip every time Haas score points.
Yes.
That needs to be like a marker. Whenever there's a Haas 10 result needs that played out.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, you shouldn't have told that.
Raikkonen can have a T-shirt. Why can't Gunther Steiner have a T-shirt?
Well, you said that, Chris. Casey has got a grin from ear to ear. He will be doing that every time now, I guarantee you. All right, well, Casey, get ready because I am going to play. I want to hear from Max Verstappen because clearly Red Bull has just decided to continue their pace here in Canada because he looked amazing yesterday. Let's hear from Max.
Yeah, it was Q2 was a bit tricky, when to go on the slicks and then doing the lap on the slick tires, and then it started raining again towards the end. So it was a lot about just communication with the team, right, to make the right calls. And yeah, I think we did that well today.
How are you feeling about tomorrow? You've got someone slightly different next to you on the front row, Nico Hülkenberg, but Fernando Alonso just behind you.
Yeah, I mean, there's still quite a lot of fast cars quite close to me. So yeah, we'll see what we have tomorrow. But I think we made some good improvements on the car. Tomorrow, of course, it's going to be quite grey, I guess, and a bit cloudy. and a bit colder, but I think it should be okay.
Great stuff. Thank you.
Bob Varsha, is there any weakness on the Red Bull team at all?
One would think not, based on what they've shown. I mean, Max has led every lap of the last 2 races in Monaco and Spain. I mean, he's just on another planet right now. The car is great. He's driving so well. He's even calmed down a little bit from the wild and crazy Max that we knew several seasons ago. Boy, it's just, he is the gold standard. So everybody else has to measure up. Formula One's not the kind of sport where they're going to try to slow down Red Bull so that everybody else has a shot. You got to raise your game. And, you know, I think truth be told, a lot of teams are showing signs that they are doing that. When you see Aston Martin, and that interview, by the way, took place before Nico Hülkenberg was one of 4 drivers that were nicked with 3-spot grid penalties. And we'll go over that later on. So that put Fernando Alonso on the front row, which had to have given Max Verstappen a few, not nightmares, but maybe a moment's pause before he went to sleep last night, because we all know Fernando is a spectacular race starter. And with this track being washed clean by all the rain last night, Fernando's going to have every bit a good shot at turn 1 as Max Verstappen is. No clean line, dirty line for this race start. So anyway, yeah, Max has every reason to be confident in what he's got going on right now.
Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to, I think it was a Checkered Flag podcast, and somebody said something about a weakness on the Red Bull team, and somebody brutally said maybe the only weakness right now is Sergio Perez, which is just pretty crazy to say because he had such a great start to the year. Look, he's won races, but
it's a mystery.
But he's just not since that accident at the Spanish Grand Prix on the beginning of qualifying. It's been all downhill for Checo since then.
Well, yeah, he's crashed a couple of times. Yeah, he was a victim of wrong place, wrong time, wrong tire, just like Charles Leclerc was yesterday. So there's that. Checo hasn't forgotten how to drive a race car, and hopefully he can right the ship pretty soon, because we saw on the broadcast, we saw Christian Horner on the pit stand shaking his head after Checo had his issues in qualifying. So,
yeah,
I'm sure. And we heard from Chris that Helmut Marko had a quiet chat with Checo. So I'm sure he's been read the riot act. I just hope that they're handling him properly, because, he's an asset to that team. He's a great number 2, doesn't want to be called that, I'm sure. But I mean, he's right. He's capable of winning races, but, he's not going to get that opportunity as long as Max is tearing up the world championship. 53 points up the road, which is more than 2 full races worth of points. So no matter what happens today, Max will still be leading the championship handily at the end of the day. But yeah, Checo has some issues. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc have some issues. Who else up and down the line? Perhaps, Pierre Gasly has some issues. It's all part of the mix. It's all the stuff we think about and talk about as the race unfolds. And this weekend offers us a lot of those opportunities.
Well, let's check in with Chris Medland. Chris, how's it going out in Montreal right now?
It's going pretty well. I do apologize if you guys lose me. I seem to be in and out a little bit on the grid because we've got a big crowd. It's quite a tight grid. This is a small island that we packed this racetrack onto. So, the grid itself is actually quite tight. There's not a lot of space either side. I'm talking like, a yard and a half to the wall from the edge of the grid, and then grandstands right over the top of you. So I was just watching Adrian Newey have a good close look at the Mercedes. So he was looking at George Russell's car. Now he's moved on to Lewis Hamilton's car. Now Lewis has come onto the grid. And it's just quite remarkable. I know he's been penalised, but directly behind, in the same spot that the lead Haas started last year, in 5th place, Nico Hülkenberg's Haas. So not getting the same amount of love from Adrian Newey, the Haas, sadly. It seems to be that he's looking more at the Mercedes. I wonder why, but that's a heavily upgraded car that has looked good here. And as Max said in that clip, there's quick cars around him now, including Fernando alongside him. But the top 4 really are not out of position, are they?
Yeah, it's true. No. Well, and speaking of that, let's hear from Fernando Alonso after qualifying yesterday.
Yeah, probably the red flag was in the wrong moment, and probably P2 was possible. But nevertheless, I think P3 is good starting position for tomorrow. A podium possibility for sure for us if we do things well. And some of our competitors are behind us, and Checo out of top 10 and Charles as well. So there is an opportunity tomorrow.
What is it about this place that brings out the best in you? I think you've always qualified in the top 5 here. You were obviously mega here last year as well, and that must bode really well for tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a place that I like for sure. Corners are very sharp, very short. Walls around, very low grip, and the weather normally hits us. You know, in the last 2 qualifyings under the wet conditions. So, yeah, all in all, a tricky place that maybe experience also helped, you know, because I raced here many years.
I've heard a funny clip from Alonso yesterday on another, I think it was BBC again, and they were talking, and he said the question was about Nico being ahead of him, and he said, "Yeah, I hope he has his camera so he can enjoy the moment while it lasts," or something like that. That's classic Alonso.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Fernando. I was hoping we'd play that clip where Danica Patrick, who did the post-qualifying interviews, did everything but hit him up for his phone number, for crying out loud. She was kind of giddy, I think, talking with Fernando. That was kind of hilarious.
It really was. Somebody commented about that in YouTube about how she's hot for Alonso. That was TW, but yes, you could feel it. It was palpable, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was funny, and it's fine. I have no problem with that. But oh boy, was,
yeah, that's great.
Hilarious to listen to.
Well, let's see. Well, Bob's going to run down the entire grid here for just a couple of minutes, but Chris, let's check in with you again, see what's going on out there.
Yeah, I'm just joining a queue to chat to Zach Brown, actually, because I'm stood right between his 2 cars, which, a pretty solid day yesterday for McLaren, all things considered. They've got the 4th row locked out. Can you lock out the 4th row? I'm saying you can. Lando Norris in 7th, Oscar Piastri in 8th. Piastri obviously caused that red flag in Q3 with his, what looked like a small off, really. He just seemed to do a lot of damage to the right rear corner, but they've repaired it all without penalty. When he hit the wall, when he dropped it out of turn 7. But with the grid penalty for Carlos Sainz, I know Bob's going to run through all of these. That penalty then kind of put the 2 McLarens together. So they're in a decent spot. They can try and work together. But I'm going to be fascinated to see from Zach's point of view, and I'm going to jump in right now. Zach, you've got your 2 cars here, and both of them in the top 8. I mean, that's a pretty strong showing from yesterday.
Yeah, we're making progress. Still a long way to go, but we knew we'd had a slow start to the year, and Barcelona was good qualifying. Obviously, a disappointing Sunday. Hopefully, we'll have a better Sunday this week. But team's doing a great job, drivers are doing a great job, and we'll just keep pushing forward.
Yeah, you mentioned the Sunday. I mean, how do you go about having a better one today? Is it does the track suit you a bit more, maybe?
I think, the cooler conditions are better for us. We know that's one of the areas that our car doesn't like is a lot of heat. So I think with the green track, with all the rain, we're in good shape. But as always, these guys are all kind of go for it in turn 1. So let's make sure we see turn 2 cleanly.
Yeah, obviously Lando got some damage last time out at the start, but you've also got some very quick cars behind you. I mean, you've done a great job to avoid chaos yesterday, but Ferrari's behind you, Sergio Perez, Lance Stroll as well. How do you hold them up?
I think we got a couple slower cars in front of us, so I think it's going to be about a good clean start, a good strategy. We'll see how the tires play out. No one got as much running as they would have liked to fully understand. Is this going to be a 1 or a 2 stop race? I think it's kind of on the borderline. So it's now in the hands of Lando, Oscar, and the team.
Just finally, you're not watching IndyCar, but it's on right now, isn't it?
It's in my pocket.
And how's your team doing?
I haven't looked yet.
Well, good luck in both races.
Thank you.
That's nice. Yeah, I guarantee he's going to be keeping an eye on that. And interesting that he was, the fact that Piastri caused a bunch of the troubles yesterday afternoon, but starting in a good position. So they're in a good spot today, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we tend to overlook the fact, Piastri had a spin and a crash, but he was in Q3 and he was competitive in Q3. He's right there with his teammate Lando Norris. Keep in mind, this young Australian is still in his rookie season, the first half of his rookie season, first quarter even. Yeah, and he's doing a great job. I also see him smiling more. I don't mean to make too big a deal out of it, but I've always thought he was kind of dour looking. You almost never saw him smiling, but now we're seeing him smiling and laughing. And I suspect that has something to do with the fortunes of the McLaren team as they try to come forward. I think you can hear a little, a little spring in the step of Zach Brown. He was talking with Chris right there. It's there's everything to play for today among that team, starting where they are.
Bob, I've learned that from you. Is that there's so much secretive about Formula One. There's only so much that we can to look at, and it's the attitude of the drivers and the team members sometimes that actually tell us some of the story. So
Sure.
no doubt. All right, well, coming up after this, we're going to get Mr. Varsha to walk us through the grid. You're listening to Speed City F1, back after a short break. Nice job, Chris, asking about IndyCar too. That was good. Nice.
Yeah, I got to check in on those results. I play the IndyCar fantasy game on their website, and
Nice.
I've been getting my butt kicked this year.
We lost Chris for a minute. It sounds like he looks like he may have walked away. He's had, like you said, he's having trouble. Hadn't dropped out while we were live on the air, so that's good. Yeah, I've got the IndyCar recorded. I'll try to watch that as part of my Father's Day. Having
It's got to be. We can smooth out this Wi-Fi problem. There's a huge construction project going on about 100 yards from my front door, and there's dozens and dozens of guys in their high-vis vests out there, pouring concrete and building stuff. And you walk by, and practically every one of them is standing around looking at his phone. And I'm thinking, where's their Wi-Fi coming from? Surely they have some kind of a source on site, but they don't seem to be getting dropout.
Well, I
We got to
just
get that for Chris.
I mean, we see it at COTA here during F1. It's just impossible for them to have that influx of hundreds of thousands of people without something. We have talked about different solutions for Chris, and all of them involve, like an FM broadcast headset or something for him that connected back to a internet source back within the media center or something with good solid connection. So there's, I don't know, maybe a sponsor will listen, will hear us one day and go, hey, I can fix that for him. But it's working okay today, not too bad. Let's see, on YouTube, Ray says, it always feels good to see Alonso living his best life. I completely agree, Ray. He says it's like seeing Jimmy Johnson coming back and being competitive in these new Cup cars. Yeah, good comparison.
Yeah.
Paul Bryan saying, Danica Patrick's attention to Alonso is simply a change of sponsorship pitch. She's trading NFL for F1. Oh, come on, Paul. Here we go, coming back live.
There may be more to that.
Yep.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
Okay, welcome back. Let's check in with Chris Medland before we go to Bob, because I want to check and make sure we're not missing an interview.
Well, I've actually sent you one. I've sent you Mr. Christian Horner that I managed to grab in the break there, but I'm also trying to hover around Fred Vasseur, who is meeting some much more important guests than I am. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to grab him straight off the back of this. I'll see if we can. And apologies if everyone can hear a lot of loud thumping music, but as is the way of these grids now, it is... I know my mic doesn't always pick it up, but it is loud here.
No, we can't even hear it.
Loud.
Like, point your mic. We want to check it out. We can't hear it.
There we go. I'll just leave it up in the air, shall I? But I'm just going to see if Fred will speak when he's done some photos. Yeah, stood between the two cars, and one of them is raised. So we've got an issue here on Charles Leclerc's car.
Oh.
Something underneath it. I'm not sure what at this point, and if I can speak to Fred, I will ask him, but I don't know if he's willing to speak at the moment. What's the issue with Charles' car, Fred?
No, it will be okay. That we are changing a small part of the plank that we damaged.
Oh, okay. So, but you think it'll be fitted in time? And what can you do today? How do you approach this race, getting these two quick cars back to the front?
Yeah, but not too quickly. We have to do it step by step. But it's true that yesterday we are not yesterday, but Friday we had a very strong pace on the long stint and short stint, and we can expect a good race. We are almost in the same condition with the track a bit green, and let's see what's happened today.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's the biggest challenge, though, staying out of trouble because you've got some slower cars ahead of you.
Yeah, for sure. But in Bahrain, in Montreal, the most important is to avoid the kind of train of DRS because then you can be stuck. Let's see what's happened end of lap 1 and who will see.
And big question, one stop or two?
We'll see.
One stop. There we go. Thank you very much. There, we've got the answer. Sorted. We know what everyone's going to do.
There you go.
There you go.
Fred Vasseur, he could work for the CIA.
Okay, Bob, before we get to your grid, we got a word from our sponsor. CrowdStrike presents Driven in 60 as the official cybersecurity partner of the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One team. CrowdStrike protects against cyber threats so the team can focus on what matters, their next win. The revolutionary cloud-native unified CrowdStrike Falcon platform harnesses the speed and power of the cloud to protect and defend organizations of all sizes against increasingly complex threats, stopping breaches before they happen. Because on and off the track, the stakes couldn't be higher. A split second can make the difference between victory and defeat. When every second counts, protection shouldn't slow you down. It should fuel your momentum. CrowdStrike, protection at every turn. To learn more and to try CrowdStrike Falcon free today, visit crowdstrike.com/XM. Okay, Mr. Varsha, take it away.
Yeah, and good luck to CrowdStrike CEO George Kurtz this weekend, racing with the GT America Series by Pirelli at Virginia International.
Yeah, there you go.
So here we go with the starting grid. Row 1, Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, his third straight pole, 25th of his career, breaking a tie with Niki Lauda and, if all goes well, his future father-in-law, Nelson Piquet. But here's the thing. Verstappen was 1.25 seconds clear of second place Nico Hülkenberg's time. That's the biggest margin over second place in the last 9 seasons. Yeah, there were mitigating circumstances, but once again, Verstappen is in his own world. He is now 53 points clear in the championship. That's 2 full races. He's got nothing to worry about. It's a nice sunny day for Max Verstappen. Next to him, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. 4th front row start in 2023 and the 2nd straight year for a Verstappen Alonso front row in Canada, thanks to a penalty to Nico Hülkenberg, throwing the Haas off the front row. Row 2 will be Lewis Hamilton in the first of the Mercedes, tied for the best start of the season for the 7-time world champ. Recall that Hamilton finished on the podium for 4th on grid here in Montreal last year, so he may have something to say. Next to him, teammate George Russell, his best grid position since starting on the front row in Australia back in round 3, the only race that Mercedes has led this season, and both Hamilton and Russell led in Melbourne. Row 3, there's Nico Hülkenberg, timed in 2nd in the Haas, but he loses out on his 3rd career front row start with a 3-place grid penalty for excessive speed under the red flag that essentially ended qualifying in a heavy rain. But still, it's the German's highest start this season. Next to him in P6, Esteban Ocon in the Alpine, a 3rd consecutive top 6 start for the Frenchman, who has started over the last 4 years, 9th, 8th, 7th, and now 6th in Montreal. On row 4, starting 7th, Lando Norris in the first of the McLarens has only started higher once this season, and that was his terrific P3 qualifying effort in Spain 2 weeks ago. Next to him, his teammate, Oscar Piastri, who improves 1 spot from his starting position in Spain, despite bringing out the red flag in Q3 here with a crash in the wet. But McLaren hasn't scored in Montreal since 2014. On to row 5, Alex Albon in the Williams, the hero of Q2. Timed his effort perfectly, setting a time on slick tires no one could match as the rain strengthened. That's the first time a Williams has...
This might be great timing, and if you say Albon's name, and I'm trying to follow him up the grids. I'm sorry, I've doorstepped you, Alex, but come on, you had a great day yesterday. What can you do today? Because this car looks quick.
It is. Let's see. We haven't had this kind of track temp, this heat yet this weekend, so yeah, a bit unknown. We've got a Haas that we're walking past right now, which is similar pace to us, maybe a little bit slower, so hopefully we can get some points.
Is it more exciting to go into a race like this, though, knowing you have that car at your disposal?
Yeah, normally, realistically speaking, we're qualifying and then looking at our mirrors in the race, but in some ways we are still, because we've got 2 Ferraris and a Red Bull behind us, but at the same time, we're able to race these 2 McLarens, I think, and the Haas, so all in all, hopefully points from the table, but it'll be difficult.
Well, good luck today. Thank you.
Well, no question, Alex Albon is really taking charge there at Williams. But here's the point about Albon. That was the first time a Williams led any session or any qualifying segment since Felipe Massa at the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa-Francorchamps in 2016. Good luck to him today. Next to him in P10, Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, who was furious with his team's tire strategy in Q2, missing Q3 for the second consecutive race for the first time in 3 seasons. Next, on to row 6, P11, Carlos Sainz in the second Ferrari, another of the 4 drivers who had a 3-spot grid penalty for impeding Pierre Gasly's Alpine in qualifying, and there was no doubt he impeded him, ending the Spaniard streak as the only driver to start top 5 in every race thus far this season. Next to him in P12, Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, another driver hurt by being on the wrong tire in qualifying well after the others had switched to slicks. So he missed Q3 for the 3rd straight race, something Checo hadn't done since 2019, while his teammate took the pole on each occasion. Row 7.
Sorry to interrupt you, Bob. I always hate this. Kevin Magnussen. Again, look, we're right on cue because I've got good to Steiner. We're with Nico Hülkenberg's car, though. Could have been on the front row. What did you make of the penalty he got yesterday?
Yeah, I think what Nico did wasn't right, obviously. I mean, I don't dispute that one, but he never put anybody in danger. And, I think a reprimand would have done it, but what I think and what the rules say is something different. So, and then, there was obviously a mistake made by him by going too fast because he had got confused with the audio signal in his ear. So it's unfortunate, but you have to live with it. And, my opinion about what is happening with penalties. So, we just need to try to make the best out of this.
And what is the best you think you can make out of it today? Because there's been times this car's looked really quick and others you've struggled on a Sunday.
I hope it is really quick, as you said, all the time today. No, without joking, it's difficult to say because Nico didn't run a lot on Friday because of the engine failure. So it was all in all a very messy weekend for us, I think if we hit the tire and we don't have too much degradation, I think we can stay in the points.
With both cars or just one? Is that the real target?
I think the real target is one. I mean, the second one, something special must happen that we can get into it.
Well, good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with the team boss there. Nico Hülkenberg wasn't endangering anybody. Yeah, he was going a little too quickly in the falling rain, all by himself on the racetrack. And the stewards issued a statement that I totally disagree with. He said, "There's a rule, so there has to be a penalty." And I totally disagree. There are circumstances that affected that rule, and they acknowledge those circumstances. They even cut down the penalty from an automatic 10-spot penalty down to just 3. But if there's reason to cut the penalty down, maybe there's a reason to eliminate the penalty entirely. Maybe give him a reprimand or a couple of points on his license or a fine or so. Anyway.
Oh, it's a good point, Bob. Good point.
Well, okay. P13 in the other Haas is, of course, K-Mag, out-qualified by Hülkenberg 6-2 on the season thus far. Haas is the first team that I'm aware of who's declared they'll have no driver changes for 2024. In the 14th spot, Valtteri Bottas for Alfa Romeo has never finished lower than 7th in Montreal since his rookie season in 2013, but he has work to do from P14. On to row 8, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, 4th in qualifying 2 weeks ago in Spain, out in Q1 here after being badly balked at the final chicane by Sainz, ruining a lap his team principal Otmar Safnauer reckoned would have been good for 6th in that qualifying segment. Starting next to him, Lance Stroll, the hometown favorite for Aston Martin, having a brutal weekend in his home race, including a spin and a 3-spot grid penalty of his own for impeding another car in qualifying. On the bright side, he advanced to Q2 at home for the first time in his career. And once again, I'll say the guy he impeded, I believe, was Pierre Gasly, who came out publicly afterward and said, "Lance doesn't deserve a 3 grid spot penalty. He didn't impede me that much." So take that, stewards. Moving on, row 9, Nick de Vries and the AlphaTauri. Both AlphaTauris eliminated in Q1 for the second time this season, using that same driveline as the A-team from Red Bull, remember. Next to him, American Logan Sargent in the Williams, eliminated in Q1, while teammate Albon led Q2 and reached Q3. The Americans' good position flattered by yet another penalty to a driver for getting in somebody's way, and that guy starts P19, Yuki Tsunoda in the second AlphaTauri, 4th and final driver who got a 3 grid spot penalty. He blocked Nico Hülkenberg. pouring more salt in the wound for the Japanese driver after he missed advancing to Q2 in qualifying by just 16 thousandths of a second. And finally, P20, caboose on the field, Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo, eliminated in Q1 for the fourth time in the last 8 races after reaching Q3 here in Montreal last season. But he starts last for the first time in more than a year. And there you have it.
All right. Thank you, sir, Mr. Varsha. All right. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to hear from Christian Horner that Chris recorded just a few moments ago. You listen to Speed City F1. Back after this. Okay, I think we're still live on the stream. And Mr. Varsha, that was a really good point. I wrote down the timestamp and circled it because I want to clip that out and put that on some social media about Nico Hulkenberg's, about the stewards. You know, let's have some common sense thrown in here too. Because there's a rule, there has to be a penalty. What? Let's let the situation dictate. So,
yeah. Agreed.
Hey, Chris just said perfect timing, national anthem. So that's good. We didn't interrupt any interviews.
Hey, it's Kismet today. I mentioned a driver.
I know.
Chris is standing next to him. And now it's time for the national anthem.
That happened at least twice, if not 3 times. Yeah. Let's see who we got on the YouTube. Oh, Jesse, the latest comment. Jesse Mason was talking about the internet at Coda. And he was saying it's frustrating to have F1 TV in the palm of your hand, but you can't listen to it. Yeah, it's just a huge challenge, especially now at Coda with the crowd growing every single year. That race day crowd the last 2 years was I think was 160, 170, 160 something for sure. I mean that.
Are they adding seats out there this year?
This year I haven't heard anything about that. But I know they
depend on ticket sales.
Yeah, and I did notice they had a few. They did release Sunday only tickets, I think, this week. So, but yeah, Ray commented for you, Bob. He says, "Always good to have Bob's insights on the grid rundown." Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank Sean Kelly, virtual stat man.
Yeah,
who compiles those for most of the world's broadcasters. David Croft, most of what he says comes right from Sean Kelly.
All right, coming back. I like that. That's cool.
Hi, this is Jay Leno from JayLenosGarage.com, and you're listening to Speed City.
Welcome back to the fastest hour in radio, Speed City.
Thank you, Mr. Leno. Hope you're doing good. I haven't heard any accidents lately, so I think Mr. Leno's doing good. I'm a big fan of Jay Leno. Hey, Chris Medland out there in Montreal. I hear your mic lighting up. What's happening?
Yeah, I'm going to try and line up the question with a Le Mans 24-hour winner. Antonio Giovinazzi is here. 1 week ago, you were winning one of the biggest races in the world. How special was that?
Yeah, really special, especially because I did it with Ferrari. You know, for me, when I was a kid, I was always dreaming to one day win an important race with Ferrari, and just special.
Well, they've got you here now this weekend. Have you been in the simulator? What kind of work are you doing when you're here as the reserve driver?
Just everything without just no driving. But yeah, it's ready to give maximum support in the sim and here in some meeting. And then yeah, just fighting because I think we have a good car today in the race pace. And we need I hope that Charles and Carlos they can gain position and take good points for the team.
And you know the team very well. You're working with them. What do you think Ferrari can achieve? See, it looks they've been tight and tough. Other times, quick, but the results happening.
Of course, it's not an easy start, but like I said before, we will never give up. I think do our job. Today also, I think, like I mentioned, we have a good car, so we need to just keep. It's still a long way to go, so I think we can still do well.
Well, we look forward to see how this team does.
Dare I say, Bob, is that a feel good?
That's to be a team principal. We'll have to see what happens. We have a good car. Yeah.
Yeah, that was very politically correct. Yes. Hey, Bob, dare I say, is that a feel-good story? The Ferrari winning Le Mans? I mean, it's hard to say that
Oh,
with Ferrari.
absolutely. Yeah, and Le Mans was a really interesting race this year. It's kind of funny. All I could think of when Antonio Giovinazzi was winning the race for Ferrari was that's exactly what Nico Hülkenberg did just a handful of years ago. He lost his Formula One drive. Porsche snapped him up and stuck him in one of their 919 prototypes for Le Mans. 3 cars in the race. 2 were World Championship entries. 1 was a 3rd car entered with a collection of drivers, including Hülkenberg. And lo and behold, they won the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So that Palmar is on Nico's career CV.
Absolutely. Well, we're about 10 minutes from the race, and the Speed City F1 pre-race. The Speed City F1 pre-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Stop today's most sophisticated cyber attacks at the office, the racetrack, and everywhere in between. Learn more at crowdstrike.com/XM. Go, Chris Medland.
Yeah, sorry about that. Shouldn't be talking over the sponsors, but it's so loud on here. I couldn't hear you, John, for a second. I was going to say on Hülkenberg, he actually did that while still racing for Force India. There was no clash with the calendar, and Force India allowed him to go and do that for Porsche. So he was still an active Formula One driver, which I love about that story. I was actually there for that race. It's incredible that he went and won it. I think we need more of that, don't we? I want to see more drivers doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, definitely. I mean, I can tell you, going back to the early '90s, Bernie Ecclestone, when he ran Formula One, never wanted his drivers from Formula One racing anything else, and he would deliberately put the Canadian race on the same weekend as Le Mans, so that none of his guys could go do what every racing driver worth his salt wants to do, which is go win the biggest race in the world at Le Mans. So now that the 2 events are separated, yeah, guys can go out there and do that. But thanks for the correction on that, Chris.
Yeah. All right, guys. Christian Horner is who Chris ran into while we had him off air a few minutes ago. So let's hear from Christian Horner now.
Yeah, I've got Christian Horner with me. And Christian, you've come back to Sergio Perez's car. I guess this is the one that's got the biggest challenge today. How do you get through this field on a track that's not always easy to overtake on?
It's not that easy to overtake, but and he's got 2 fast Ferraris around him. So strategy is going to be crucial, and let's see.
I mean, sun's coming out, it's warming up. Is that good for you or bad for you?
I don't know, I'll tell you in about an hour and a half.
Right, and for Max, there's still quick cars around him too, though. Alonso's talking quite punchy with the upgrades. Mercedes improving. Is it going to be a tough battle today?
It could well be. I mean, it's always a tricky little circuit, this one. So, yeah, let's see. We just got to run our own race.
And it could be a very special day for you, though. Can it 100 race wins on the cards if you get that one? Is that in your mind at all?
Well, look, it's just another race at the moment, but it's a big number for us. So we just want to keep the momentum going.
All right, well, good luck today.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make Red Bull the 5th team in Formula One history to get 100 victories, along with Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, and who was the 4th one? Oh, Williams.
Yeah. That's an elite group, I would have to say.
Tell you what, I'm going to have T-shirts made, and it's going to say, "We'll have to wait and see" across the chest.
Yeah, I'll tell you in 2 hours. That's pretty funny. I'll tell you right after the race. Okay, Bob, just thinking about some of these drivers coming up through, because we're going to have Lance Stroll coming from 16th. I have Sergio Perez coming from 12th. Carlos Sainz coming from 11th. Leclerc from 10th. It could get pretty interesting. And of course, we're going to see, hopefully, we got Hülkenberg at 5th. Hopefully, he can hold top 10 moving the other direction, I would think would be the worst case scenario. I definitely want to see him get some points today. But what do you think about all these drivers coming through?
Well, it's going to be tough. As you heard Christian Horner say, it's a very narrow racetrack. It's very hard to pass, but there are 3 DRS zones on this track, both in very fast sections. Certainly everybody is familiar with the long run from the hairpin at turn 10 down to the final chicane where the champion's wall awaits the unwary. So it's going to be interesting to see where these drivers choose to make their passing attempts. You're going to have to be very patient, I think, and hopefully it'll be great fun to watch. I recall back in 95 or 97 when Olivier Panis was driving in a Ligier, I believe, and he did one of these billiard ball jobs, left wall, right wall, and so on, on the backside of the course there and broke his legs in the process. They brought out a red flag and stopped the race and never resumed it. I mean, it is a very tricky, it's a beautiful track, but very tricky. And least of all, but perhaps most of all, let's remember that these 25-pound rodents they call marmots live on this island, and they are not afraid or they're stupid enough to mosey out in front of these fast-moving race cars, and that can be a problem.
Yeah, that's true. Hitting one of those at 200 miles an hour would not be pretty either way for both parties. Chris Medland, I hear your mic, buddy. Are you near? Are you lurking? Are you standing by someone?
I'm just running around the paddock now, but I did actually just bump into a team strategist, and I asked that question that I put to Fred Vasseur, one stop or two, and they said, why not both? So split it across your two cars, do a one stop with one, two stop with the other, but that shows you that's kind of hedging bets. A few teams might be able to do. If a team is going to do it, though, I think it's Mercedes, because obviously second row, they're the only team with two cars in the top 5, top 8, actually, isn't it? I said the McLaren's on row 4. They're not a threat to Mercedes. So if they want to do something different to attack Alonso and Verstappen, they can split their strategies across the two cars.
Yeah, Mercedes.
That's a great thought.
Yeah.
That's a great thought, because this is the kind of race where they'll split strategies. So the question becomes, which of your two drivers becomes the guinea pig? What do you do? Who's first to try changing or not changing tires? And that's where, team discipline and team orders come into effect. It'll be interesting to watch that as well.
Yes, and I'm just thinking about Mercedes. We haven't really seen all the effect of the upgrades that they've done yet because of the different tracks we've been to. They're sitting at 3 and 4. We're going to have our predictions. In fact, we're down to about 3 minutes left in the show. I think let's do that. Let's do some predictions, and I'll go first since then I typically make you guys do that. But I'm interested enough to see what Mercedes can do, and then I'm going to pick Lewis Hamilton to come in second after Max Verstappen's win, followed by Alonso. So what about you, Mr. Varsa?
I would guess, and that's all it really is, Verstappen wins, Alonso second, George Russell third.
Okay, I like that. Chris Medland?
All right, I'm going to go for chaos today. I'm going to go for an incident because, Red Bull have won everything, haven't they? So I'm going to go Hamilton.
Oh,
win.
no! Oh, mayhem!
Mayhem.
I'm going to go with Ocon in second because of whatever carnage it was. And then Perez third.
You predicted complete chaos, aren't you?
That's chaos.
I like it.
Yeah. I'll be wrong, but I'm trying it.
No, I like it.
Predicting a flood in the rowing basin.
Yeah, just contact somewhere. I kind of feel like if Alonso can actually give Verstappen a race, it'd be thrilling, even if Verstappen wins it. But also, when that finally happens, that they're kind of more equal, I think the bromance will end between those two. So I think they've got to work out how to properly race each other because they've not been in equally matched machinery at any point in their careers. And as we've seen with Verstappen and Hamilton, it doesn't transition smoothly between drivers of different generations sometimes. So yeah, I'm really fascinated to see that.
Hey, but you know what, Chris? Didn't we see the last race that Alonso and Verstappen started? But they showed the statistics on the screen, of course, where you 0 to 200 kilometers an hour and the reaction time, and they were both identical. So all it would take would be a tiny mistake. I hardly even call it a mistake. And the perfect launch by Alonso for him to step out in front of Max.
Yeah, just on that very quickly. I know we're running out of time, but Tom McCulloch from Aston Martin, when he spoke this morning, did say, because it's a green track with the rain we had, no rubber down, the grip level is very low across the grid. It's good. It means there's not a good side and a bad side. You're not disadvantaged being on one side of the grid or the other, especially with the racing line cutting across it normally anyway. But it then just comes down to getting that feel and trying to get the power down. It's tricky to do, but whoever does that well can get actually quite a big advantage to someone who might get it wrong because of the low grip. So yeah, we could see a few positions change, and it would be fun, wouldn't it, if Alonso led at the end of the first lap?
That's what I'm hoping for. All right, here we go, boys. We are out of time. The race is coming up here. Stick right where you are, Channel 81, ESPN Extra on SiriusXM. But come join us after the race. We have a full 1-hour post-race show. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you after the race.